Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm continuing with my series of describing my symptoms. So basically, what do my symptoms feel like? I'm not sure what order they're going to go up in. I kind of have an idea of what order I want to sort of upload them, but either way, they're going to go under my symptom playlist. So they'll all be there for you to watch if you're curious about what these symptoms feel like. So today I wanted to talk about my light sensitivity. I actually recently redid a video talking about my light sensitivity, but I think I just talked about like how it's affected my life. I didn't really describe it in detail. And I also want to talk about possibly my theory as to what is actually behind the light sensitivity, because a lot of times when you think of light sensitivity, you think of the eyes or the eyeball, the structure of the eyeball and the nerves and that kind of thing. And I really, I've had my eyes checked, and I don't think it has anything to do with the actual eye, but I will get to that. So the onset of this, at the time I was working from home, so I had gotten to a point where I knew that I was not going to be able to work physically. I was a substitute teacher at the time. I actually had been working in an office. I got let go from that because I started having, muscle issues at that time. So then I went back to substitute teaching. I had been a sub for many, many years. And so I decided it's probably best to go back to that because I'm going to be in and out of the doctors for who knows how long. And then I started to see that I was struggling with that. And I thought, you know what, maybe working from home is going to be the solution to this, because I could already tell that I was, my health issues were evolving a lot. So I became an English tutor online. So I was doing basically just English tutoring for like I think it was like 3 to 4 hour chunks. I think it was probably maybe 3 days a week. It was part-time. So I was working part-time there and then subbing the other days, sometimes even doing both in the same day, depending on what schedule I would get. So I was doing a lot of work on a laptop. So I started noticing as I was sitting on the laptop, and I had just like I guess your everyday run-of-the-mill kind of laptop. It was just like a PC. It wasn't a MacBook or anything like that. I would suddenly feel like dizzy, like I was like that sensation, like I was gonna fall back out of my chair, and it would kind of hit me, and I was just like, whoa, what was that? Almost, I guess, kind of maybe like a little head rush, but it didn't affect my vision. Usually when you get a head rush, your vision kind of goes black a little bit. And I was like, okay, what was that? And then, like, I don't think it happened numerous times during one session, but then like the next day it would happen again, and then it kind of happened with more frequency. So I don't know, it was a very bizarre sensation, but I kind of didn't really think much of it. And then I started noticing my vision was kind of changing a little bit. And this wasn't when I was uh, working on the laptop. This was actually when I was working at the school. As a sub, I was noticing that everything looked kind of like a 35 millimeter film. Like if you've ever seen one of those older films that they're kind of grainy, and they just kind of look different. They look kind of worn. That's what my vision was looking like. Things were looking kind of grainy, like an old film. And I was like, what is this? This is really bizarre. And it's not like I wasn't able to see. I was still able to see. I was seeing just fine. I could see everything, but there was just something bizarre about my vision that was just kind of like, why does everything look weird? One of the things too that I had to look back now. I was feeling kind of listless, kind of confused, especially when I was in the classroom. I was noticing that I was having a much harder time controlling my classes, because as a substitute teacher, that is a big part of your job, is just a lot of behavior control, discipline, and keeping the kids, in line and doing their work. And I was actually really, really good at this. I had teachers that would specifically request me on the days that they couldn't be there, because they knew that I had really good behavior management. And I just was finding myself not able to keep the classes calm. I was kind of disoriented. I felt kind of listless, kind of out there. I don't want to say that I felt foggy. I just felt like out there. And of course that weird vision thing. And I don't know, I didn't put the pieces together until afterwards. So that was the beginning, and it then it began to evolve. And there's something that I can't, my memory with this particular symptom, you know, when I had my pelvic pain, when I had my rib cage muscle stiffness, I clearly remember that it was over the course of several weeks. And I have a feeling that with the light sensitivity, it was the same. Um, you know, I can't exactly remember how long it took from the onset to get all the way to, how I am now. But I want to say it was a few weeks. It didn't happen overnight. Um, but that my memory is very foggy when it comes to this. I began having head pain, and again I can't quite remember when that head pain began or how it began or how I put the pieces together that this was a light related issue. It just happened. It just happened that way. And so I started having head pain and pressure in my head. Somehow, I think it was my iPod. I had an iPod Touch, which you guys have seen on this channel. I've actually shown it. Um, it was back when the iPod Touch was like the hot thing. And I think I was playing like video games or something on it, or I was just using it a lot. And I started noticing that like it was hurting, like my head was hurting when I would use it. And so little by little, I started to put the pieces together that I was having some kind of issue with light. And I think by the end of the school year, I remember clearly the school year was ending. So this was like June. I remember, I think one of the last assignments that I did at one of the elementary schools, I kept the lights off, because I had already put the pieces together that it was the lights that were bothering me. And I kept the lights off, and the kids were like, "Why does she have the lights off?" And I was really scared that I was gonna get caught by the principal, because they were gonna wonder, why is she keeping the lights off? That's very odd behavior, especially for a substitute teacher. So I do think it was over the course of several weeks that I came to that conclusion, because by the time the year ended, the school year ended, I knew something was going on. So I felt better with the lights off. Eventually, I changed out all the lights in our apartment, the ones that could be changed. I used an incandescent light bulb, and no more fluorescent or LED lights. Stopped using the laptop. I had to give up my online job. And then it was summertime, so the school year was over. So I basically was like, okay, I'm out of work for the summertime at least. Um, and these headaches and this head pain would last for days. In the beginning, when I still hadn't figured out that I had to stop using, these devices. Um, and even once I stopped, it took several days for me to feel the pain coming down, and then I was like, okay, it's definitely that. Um, I don't know if I had seizures. I remember a couple times when I was asleep, I would have very, very strange sensations, and I would wake up almost like, something in my head, or I don't know. But I remember a couple of occasions when that would happen early on, when I still had that head pain from using the laptop and all of that. But I can't say for sure that I had a seizure or anything like that. I don't know. It could have just been that my head was hurting so much that, that it was just disrupting my sleep. So that's kind of that. What is the remedy for this? Has anything helped? A lot of people give me recommendations. They tell me to use glasses. They tell me to use a blue light blocker or a filter on my phone. None of that helps. Um, I do have a theory that, because it's not my eyes. I did have something called a SPECT scan done a few years later, and it did show that I had, I guess, like hyperperfusion, which I guess is like a lack of oxygen going to the brain. And so I had a mild traumatic brain injury. So I think we can conclude that it's something in the brain. It's some kind of lack of oxygen, and that's what's affecting or how I'm registering it through my eyes, I guess, but it does hurt in my head. My eyes didn't really hurt. They would feel tired in the beginning, but then that tired sensation spread to my head, and so my eyes were no longer tired. It was just pain in my head. Um, I would say that possibly, my diet has helped, but I can't. It's difficult to really pin it down because for whatever reason, the light sensitivity, even though it's one of the most disabling symptoms that I have and very painful, um, my observing it and almost quantifying it, the intensity is very difficult for whatever reason. It's really hard to like measure this one out. Whereas like my rib cage and my other symptoms, I can say like, oh, today it's at a 10 or tomorrow's at a 5, something like that. The light sensitivity is very, very difficult to sort of um, get a handle on. Um, but I want to say that diet has helped because diet has kind of helped my other symptoms as well. Um, Avoiding fluorescent lighting in particular, changing out the light bulbs, using incandescent lighting, also trying to avoid LED light sometimes. I switched out my devices to be, or like OLED. I think I do okay with OLED, but for the most part, not using those devices for very long. And that seems to kind of help the situation. I still to this day cannot work for prolonged periods of time on a laptop, and I have to be very careful with my phone. I did eventually find the Droid Max, which seems to work pretty well for me, and I also have the Moto Z4, which I've been doing okay with. Um, my IVIG, I do think has helped with the light sensitivity because I've noticed that as I've been on my IVIG, I seem to be able to tolerate at least my cell phone a bit better. But that could also be just wear and tear from the cell phone. And if you want to know about that, I did do a video on things that help my light sensitivity or like ways that I've been able to work around it. So you might want to check that one out to see sort of how I've been able to find devices that I can use while still having the light sensitivity. Now, one of the reasons I think the IVIG may have helped is because I have long suspected that the light sensitivity isn't so much that something is like attacking my brain and that's what's causing the lack of oxygen. I do believe that this may be related to the stiff person syndrome issue where I have muscle stiffness because the trajectory of the light sensitivity was very, very similar to my pelvic floor issue and my rib cage. It came on very subtly. There were some, subtle signs at the beginning, the slight dizziness, that kind of thing. And then it evolved over the course of weeks. I'm pretty sure it took weeks, even though I can't exactly remember. I'm pretty sure that it was over the course of several weeks. I believe I got married. I got married in April of that year. And by June, I was no longer able to work. So in April, I was still able to go inside buildings that had fluorescent lighting and I wasn't having major, major issues. But by June, I was, I was totally disabled. I was totally light sensitive and I couldn't work anymore. So I look back at that and I think from April to June, that's only a couple of months because the school year ends about mid-June. And I think I got married about mid-April. That's like a couple of months. So it could have been, again, a 6 to 8 week process, which is very similar with my other muscle issues. And so my best guess with this light sensitivity is that it may have something to do with the neck muscles and muscles in the head and possibly in the sinus area. I am not a doctor. I don't know anatomy very well. What I do know is that we have muscles everywhere. And even though we never typically think of the head as being a very muscular part of the body, we always think about like maybe legs or arms. The head has a lot of muscles. And so I suspect that there are muscles from the neck and the head that are spasming and that's causing some kind of compression on the brain area, and that is causing issues with oxygen and that light sensitivity problem. And that would also be in line with a traumatic brain injury because if you have an impact to the head, it kind of changes the structure and it puts pressure on the brain. So That to me is my theory behind it. And that would make sense if the IVIG is helping to loosen the muscles even a little bit. Um, it could be allowing a little bit more oxygen to get through and reducing the light sensitivity a little. So that's my theory. And the other reason I'm kind of going with this theory is because one of the other things, and I don't want to say that physical therapy has helped. Again, um, I can't really quantify it with my light sensitivity because it is something that is so constant and so persistent and so unchanging that it's difficult to say, oh, this helped or and that didn't help. But I remember on one occasion, I was going to this physical therapist. She was really, really great. It's like an advanced type of physical therapy. They do something called the visceral manipulation. And obviously, if you know what that kind of translates to, it's like a manipulation of your organs, of your internal organs. Um, and it's a type of physical therapy where they work with the structures, the exterior structures of the body, the tissues, the muscles, in order to sort of manipulate the internal organs. And it's an actual real type of physical therapy. Like it's not, any woo woo, like witchcraft type of thing. It's a real type of physical therapy, but it's not a common type. And it takes some very intensive training because it's very difficult to do. And so I had, my physical therapist started working on my head. Usually we were working on other parts of the body. I had started seeing her for the trunk stiffness. And during the course of my time with her, I developed the light sensitivity. And she started feeling the structures of my head. And she looked at me and she goes, "Are you worse on your right side than on your left?" And I was like, huh, that's interesting. Like, why would she say that? And I am worse on my right side. And now over time, I think as I've, done anti-inflammatory things and I've been on IVIG, I can clearly feel that my right side is worse than my left, which goes in line with stiff person syndrome and my rib cage and my pelvic floor because all of my symptoms are asymmetrical. And so she did some work. She used to do some work inside my jaw where she would actually go like hook her fingers into the top of my jaw and pull, like yank on my jaw, like pull upwards. I would be laying down on a massage table. And I remember feeling sort of a relief of the pressure in my head. And then one time she did this thing where she had me close my eyes and she gently was like moving, I don't know, the eyes. It was very, very strange. And I remember feeling one of those bizarre dizzy spells that I had when I would work on the laptop. So, if my physical therapist is feeling things and seeing things, they're trained to be able to see the structures of your body, and they're trained to be able to feel inconsistencies or tightness in the muscles and in the tissues. I'm guessing that it is a structural issue, not a brain damage or an internal issue. Obviously, tons of inflammation is going to affect you everywhere, but I do believe that this is something that is likely a neuromuscular thing, which is why glasses are not going to help. Which is why blue light filters are not going to help, which is why, lowering the brightness is not going to help because it really isn't anything to do with the eyes or the optic nerve, which I did have examined. And they said, your optic nerve is great, everything's fine. It is definitely something that I would say is probably a structural issue impeding, the flow of oxygen to the brain and, everywhere else in the head. And I do, when I would get the really bad pain and pressure, it almost felt sinusy. It almost felt like it was behind the eyes. And this is going to sound very creepy, but I can actually sometimes hear my sinuses snapping. Like if I would expose myself to light too much and then I develop a headache, I feel like I can hear my sinuses snapping. It's just a very, very bizarre thing to feel in my head. But that is basically it with the light sensitivity. If you haven't checked out the other videos, check out my, me talking about my light sensitivity and just kind of, updating that video. And then the other one of how I've managed to work around the light sensitivity, and what I've done in order to kind of accommodate myself, because this is one of those issues that is very difficult to accommodate. Like I can't go to a movie theater, I can't go to the store, I can't ask a store to turn off all their lights so that I can go shopping. It's almost impossible to accommodate this, and it's very limiting. But anyways, if you have any questions regarding the light sensitivity, please leave them down in the comments. I would be happy to answer any questions if I can. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.